Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Travel, Learn and Teach. Today I thought I would talk a little bit about the new digital nomad visas that have been popping up all over the world in the last few months. So this opens up it opens up lots of new doors for different types of tourism and different options for remote working. So I thought it was quite an interesting topic to discuss, whether you are somebody who might be interested in going to work abroad for a period of time and working remotely, or whether you are a person who is studying the travel and tourism industry or working in the travel and tourism industry, and this might have positive or negative impacts on your business, your livelihoods, etc. So let's start off by talking about the concept of a digital nomad. So this is not a new concept. However, lots of these visas, which aren't all called digital nomad visas, there are different names that they are given in different countries, but essentially that's what they are. And you have, I've just seen someone pop up already, Caribbean global destination. So there's lots of these destinations are in the Caribbean. So I will get to that. So let's talk about, what is a digital nomad? So it's kind of strange actually that these visas are only just seem to be popping up now, even though digital nomads have been around for some time. So a digital nomad is essentially a person who is nomadic. So they move from place to place. The concept of digital nomads is largely associated with younger people, sort of in their 20s, 30s. It's largely associated with people who are backpacking, who haven't necessarily sort of settled down yet, etc., and people who are traveling around. So there are greetings from Indonesia. Hi, Nat. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, sorry, I'm a bit off my train of thought. Okay, so digital nomad visas. So digital nomads are people who work digitally. So essentially, they may be freelancers, they might be employed self-employed, they could be employed by an organization, but their work is digital based. So they can work essentially from their laptop. Hi there, Ramesh. Thanks for listening. So people who work digitally and they want to travel, and it sounds great, doesn't it? Travel the world and work at the same time. And actually, if you read stories by bloggers, often will write about this kind of thing. If you read them, it's not actually that easy. There's a lot of family travel bloggers that I follow, and they often talk about how they will work late at night and then do all of their exploring during the day. And that's pretty hardcore, actually, because if you're traveling full time, it can be quite difficult to get work done as well. I certainly know that myself. So actually, digital nomads tend to be slow tourists. So if you're not familiar with the concept of slow tourism, it's essentially people who are traveling slowly. So they'll often stay in one place for an extended period of time. They are often more immersed into the local culture, into the area that they're in. They often travel by slower means, car, train, etc., rather than flying, because they've got a bit more time. Sorry, yeah, my little girl Johnson, she's brought me some toys here. So, you going to take your car? No, she wants to join us. So digital nomads have been around for some time. However, in most cases, they are not actually working legally, because most countries do not allow you to work on a tourist visa. Now, it is a bit of a grey area, if you go on a holiday, let's say we go on a 2-week holiday to Thailand and I check my emails each day. Theoretically, I'm working when I'm checking those emails. So is that allowed if I'm on a tourist visa? Maybe I attend a quick Zoom call Is that allowed? So it is a bit grey, but overall, you're generally not allowed, and certainly if you're, working full time, that's not allowed. Sorry, she's distracting. It's not allowed to work full time on a tourist visa. People have been getting away with it for many years, but as more and more people are now working remotely, this is happening more and more. So what COVID pandemic has also done is it has changed the way that we work. It's changed many things in our life, but it's changed the way that we work, and it has meant that lots of companies have a lot more trust in their employees that they can work remotely and they can do their work. So this has given us new freedoms. Whether we want to work in the coffee shop down the road from our home, whether we want to sit and work in the park, whether we want to work from the comfort of our bed, or whether we want to work from a beach in Barbados, there are now these new opportunities that we didn't have before, which is really exciting. So what's happened is during the COVID pandemic, destinations have obviously had a huge shortage of tourism. And they've seen this as an opportunity. We want people, but we don't want people who are coming short term. And we also don't want people who are not going to contribute largely to our economy. So digital nomad visas are generally not being given out to any old person who claims to be a digital nomad. And lots of countries have stipulations in terms of minimum salary. So they are requiring you to earn, often it's $50,000 a year, but it does differ depending on which country. And there's lots of Caribbean countries that are offering this, which is quite exciting. And they've offered it as a way to attract people who are working remotely during the pandemic because they can't go to work, who have the opportunity to travel, obviously adhering by all of the COVID requirements and restrictions. So some of the destinations are currently specifying you will need to do quarantine, have testing, etc. Obviously, in the long term, or I very much hope in the long term that won't stick, but very important right now. But this is one way that destinations are trying to attract people to go there without having influx of tons and tons of tourists who may potentially bring the virus with them. So it's a great way to attract also quite profitable people, because a digital nomad who earns at least $50,000 a year has some money to spend in the destination. So they are going to spend money on accommodation. They are going to spend money on food. They are going to probably spend some of their disposable income on leisure. So all of that money is coming in from abroad into that destination. So it's a great way for countries and destinations to bring in foreign income. And this is a positive economic impact of tourism, and is a great way to boost tourism and an innovative strategy when times are very difficult. However, there are always pros and cons, and it's always important to think, look at both sides of the coin. And this could, if it's not managed well, it could cause some problems, actually. And one of the major issues is that it could cause rises in prices. So if there are lots of digital nomads who decide to go to a particular area, let's stick with my example of Barbados. So all of a sudden you have lots of people who all want to move to areas of Barbados. Perhaps you build up a digital nomad community. So I would usually say expat community, but it is important to note that digital nomads are not the same as expats. Expats are people who move somewhere, and it tends to be longer term. They settle, they normally have residency visas, etc. Whereas a digital nomad, in the essence of that is that they are nomadic and moving around. So a lot of these visas are for a year or two, whereas if you were an expat, you would probably have a visa that would last for a few years. Obviously, the rules do differ depending on which country you're in. So if we do develop these communities, we then have, there's the potential for that to cause social impacts. So if you've got different types of people, that could perhaps encourage, sorry, my daughter's knocking things off the shelves behind me. That could perhaps encourage, a certain types of behaviour. It could taint the authenticity, perhaps, of the destination. Yeah, I just wants to take a picture. No, it doesn't work now. This is great, isn't it? We can work from home with our children. They distract us like this. Yeah, so it can have negative impacts. And you've got potentially lots of digital nomads who all want accommodation, who are all paying for their accommodation. But what that can do is that can mean that the accommodation providers, whether that be hotels, whether that be Airbnb owners, whatever it might be, that they might end up putting up their prices. That can cause increases in real estate prices, increases in goods and services in the area too, which can lead potentially to gentrification when people in the local area can no longer afford to live there. So this is obviously not good. And, this just highlights the importance of having really, really careful planning and management within the tourism industry. And I know that I have lots of teachers who like to share these videos with their students. So, what I would say to anybody who's studying travel and tourism is, look at a case study and tear it apart and look at what could happen and what could happen down the line and what's the trail there. And, how do we best manage that? And it's all about minimizing the negative impacts and maximizing the positive impacts there and really capitalizing on the good parts of it. So, this digital nomad visa could have great economic consequences for destinations, but it could also have some negative implications too. So it's really, really important that it is managed well. So I've actually written an article all about this. I published it this week. So you can have a look on the website if you're interested to learn a little bit more. Sorry, I've just brought the article up to remind me. So my article lists some of the most attractive destinations that are now offering the digital nomad visa. So these visas have mostly been introduced since the onset of the COVID pandemic last year, which is pretty remarkable, actually, that so many countries are offering these visas now. And I think that there will be more. And it really opens up so many opportunities in the world. And one of the things that I wonder whether this might happen in the long term is at the moment we've got rich countries and rich cities, London, New York, Sydney, etc. And we've got poor places, which are largely rural places, largely developing countries. And I wonder if the disparities between the rich and the poor these stark differences actually might become less, because people can earn the same amount whether they live in Bangkok or whether they live in Delhi or whether they live in New York or whether they live, halfway up Mount Kilimanjaro. Now that we can work remotely, okay, maybe Kilimanjaro wasn't the best example because Wi-Fi didn't really exist up there, although I did get phone signal. I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro a couple of years ago. I did get phone signal 4G quite high up, so it might be possible, but a bit dodgy probably. But you get the idea. You could live anywhere and potentially be able to do your same job if you work remotely. So this has the potential really to have a significant impact on the dynamics of the whole world. And, to really disrupt what we have in terms of the rich places and the poor places and all the implications around that. So I do wonder if the growth of online working and people having the opportunities to live in different places, not everybody will probably want to go to an exotic country, but some people might choose to live outside of the city, to live closer to their family and relatives, etc. So it does have the growth in remote working does have a big potential to change the way we live, really. Anyway, I'll get back to giving you some examples of some of the most attractive. This isn't a an exhaustive list, but here is a list of a few. So number 1 on my list is Antigua and Barbuda. So they have a nomad digital residence visa that they're offering. The criteria is that you must work for a company or for yourself outside of Antigua and Barbuda. Applicants must have their own health insurance. You must earn at least $50,000 a year. And you can take your family with you for that one, which is quite handy. Barbados, as I mentioned earlier, is also jumped on the bandwagon here. They call it their Barbados welcome stamp. So similarly, you also need to earn $50,000 a year there, and you must work for a company outside of Barbados. Another one is Bermuda. What a beautiful place to live. So their 12-month work from Bermuda certificate is their equivalent of the digital nomad visa. They don't have a minimum income, which might suit some people a bit better. Croatia has introduced a similar program, which is good for non-EU digital nomads. We then have the Czech Republic. Now this one is a little bit complicated to get, but it is possible. It's called a Zivno. I'm not sure if I've pronounced that right. Zivno visa. 1-year visa. Again, there's lots of paperwork to do, but you can potentially work digitally in the Czech Republic. Georgia. Georgia's a place that's really interested me in recent years. I haven't been, but it looks fascinating. It looks like an absolutely beautiful country with a great cost of living. So I think it would be really cost effective to go traveling there. So hopefully sometime soon. So their visa is called the Remotely from Georgia visa. Jamaica doesn't have a specific visa, but they are open to people coming in on long-term visas. So they're pretty flexible. So that's another option. And then Norway. So Norway has an independent contractor visa. So you need to be contracted to do some work with a company in Norway for that one. Again, there's a bit of paperwork around it, but you can. That is an option for digital nomads too. And Spain have a non-lucrative visa. Now, this is not so much for people who are working, but more for people who are investors, so landlords, crypto investors, that sort of thing, is good for the non-lucrative visa. So they are some of the interesting options that I come across. And I really think this is an interesting concept that, you know, I've also written about something that's quite similar called the workation, work with a K, A-T-I-O-N. And that's, you know, that suggests that people are kind of amalgamating work and leisure a lot more. And I think with the option to work remotely, that's naturally going to happen. You know, look at the way I've just had my daughter here playing Play-Doh on the floor, by the way, while I'm, you know, talking about work stuff. By being at home and doing your work, you naturally will get that. A lot of the time you can separate out work and leisure, and many people would argue that you definitely should do that, but naturally there is a sort of convergence there. And so this concept of the workation suggests that it's a great thing to go abroad, or actually it doesn't have to be abroad, go somewhere else, stay there for a while and do your work from there. And I think that there are a lot of possibilities and a lot of options. And I think it's a really interesting time. We can, you know, we can see where the industry goes and how this might change the way that tourism looks, because let's face it, we're not going to go back to the tourism industry that we had in 2019. A lot of things I'm sure will be very similar, if not the same, but a lot of things will be different too. And there are a lot of trends out there that are suggested, such as sustainability, for example, more smart tourism, more cleanliness. health passports, all of that kind of stuff. But there's actually a lot more that will probably change because of this pandemic too. And I think that this is one really good example. So I hope you found that quite interesting. I do plan to have some guests on to these LinkedIn Live sessions. So we will hopefully talk about a range of interesting topics over the coming weeks. So if you are interested in talking about your area of expertise, or a particular issue, tourism-related issue or teaching-related issue that you think is worthwhile talking about, and then just drop me a message and we can have a talk. So I hope you enjoyed that, and we'll tune in next week.